Welcome to the Recovery Room. I'm Tim Tedder, a licensed counselor and the creator of AffairHealing.com. The Recovery Room podcast focuses on issues related to relationship challenges, especially the struggles that result from infidelity. In this new season of our podcast, we've already explored Elisa's betrayal story, the subject of gaslighting, indecision between choosing an affair or a marriage, limerence, compromises that lead to infidelity, runaway husbands, affair motives, multiple affairs, and conversations about songs written about infidelity issues. In the next few months, we'll take an honest look at affair recovery outcomes and consider the problem of sleeplessness following affair trauma. We'll talk about forgiveness and trust, relationship boundaries, struggles with empathy, getting to the truth, and understanding why someone chooses to cheat. But in this episode, we're going to take a look at a phrase that's sometimes said to a partner. I love you, but I'm not in love with you. And we'll consider these questions. What does someone mean when they say that? What are the conditions that seem to prompt that kind of declaration? How should you respond if someone tells you I love you, but I'm not in love with you? And can a relationship survive this? Should it survive? We'll hear opinions from people on the street, and we'll consider one woman's unique response to this message, and we'll consider your options if you should ever be the recipient of this declaration. Before we get to it, can I just tell you, if you're not part of our newsletter group, please join. Once a week, I send out an email with an encouraging message, along with updates to all the new resources, mostly free, that have been added in the past week, as well as recommendations to other resources that we think you'd appreciate. So go to AffairHealing.com/newsletter to sign up. Now, let's talk about it. ILYBINILWY.
Welcome to The Recovery Room, a podcast presented by AffairHealing.com.
In this healing place, in this healing place.
It's one of the most devastating sentences you can hear in a long-term relationship. 10 words that land like a punch to the gut. The first 3 are words we long to hear.
I love you.
I love you.
I love you.
I love you.
But then come 7 more that twist everything around.
But I'm not.
But I'm not in love.
But I'm not
in love. But I'm not in love. But I'm not.
I love you, but I'm not in love with you.
When someone makes that declaration, what does it mean? I asked some people on the street what they thought it meant.
I love you as a person, but I don't love you enough to see myself with you for the rest of my life.
I think sometimes when you're with a person for a really long time, they change a little bit. And I think with that change, you realize that you're not really in love with that person. You love them for being with them, maybe having children with them, having a life already spent together. But you just realize that maybe as you've grown and changed throughout the years, that you're not really in love with that person.
It probably just sounds conditional. Conditional, and just they're not ready for giving 100%, even though they give those words, but it's like,
there's weight to one versus the other for sure. Yeah. And it's like maybe they're like, if I say I love you and I give 100% myself, then that's it and that's done, and then I can't do anything else anymore. Which,
I think everyone's definition of love might be different, but I think if you love someone but you're not in love with them, you might care deeply for them and you want the best for them, but maybe at the time your feelings aren't like your definition of love is not as strong for that person at the time.
I love you can be out of friendship, it can be out of commitment. Like you said, it can be out of having built a life together. You care deeply for the person, but that's different than a romantic type of a love or a feeling an attraction for the person where you feel, closely connected in a way.
Yeah, I think everyone wants somebody to be in love with them in a relationship. So especially if they're coming out and saying that, that's I don't know that's things change, of course. Everyone changes over time, but obviously that wouldn't feel very good to hear.
I think that means that they're they may not be like totally all in my opinion. Like they love the thought of being with you, but they're not really like all in with it right now.
I think it's a cop-out that you say when things are going bad and you're ready to run away from a relationship versus actually putting in the effort to rebuild it.
When trying to understand what it means, please remember that context matters. For example, many couples shift from a consuming kind of love, one made up of passion, intimacy, and commitment, toward a companionship love, one that holds on to commitment and maybe even intimacy, but without the passion. Now, that shift can happen naturally. I mean, honestly, how many of you who have been married for more than a couple of years can say that you wake up in the mornings with butterflies in your stomach, consumed with the pleasure of spending another day with your spouse? Do I see any hands out there? No, I mean, we know things change, but still, it can feel like a death if partners stop cultivating desire. Another context to understand this statement is that the phrase is sometimes used to soften a breakup line. It's a more polite way to say, I want out, or I met someone else, or our sex life is flat and I don't want to work on it anymore. Or other times, it's a statement of confusion. Stress, low mood, or burnout can mute feelings and get mislabeled as falling out of love. Bottom line, the phrase is usually a signal light, not a verdict. It says something important is missing, not necessarily there's nothing left. What are the conditions under which people tend to say this? Let's consider 5 common conditions. The first one, infidelity. Now, since you're listening to this podcast, there's a good chance that your relationship has been affected by infidelity. During affairs, novelty, admiration, and secrecy supercharge limerence. The betraying partner often romanticizes the affair and devalues the marriage. And that convinces them that, see, I'm not in love with you. That's perception under influence. Cutting off contact and letting the neurochemistry settle down are essential steps back to reality. But the involved partner rarely wants to give up this feeling of euphoria. Instead, they come up with explanations for their choices. I'm not in love with you anymore. Maybe something they actually believe. But what they feel is not usually a valid measure of love that will endure. Another condition in which this statement is said is when there's trauma in the betrayed partner. If you were betrayed, you may feel numb, detached, or even repulsed for a while. That's a trauma response. It's not necessarily proof of permanent lovelessness. It's going to take time to know what injuries remain and which ones diminish, and how you'll eventually end up feeling about your partner. A third condition, long periods of disconnection. Research by Dr. John Gottman shows that relationships erode when partners chronically turn away from daily bids for connection. Those bids are the little reaches like a glance, a question, a joke, or a touch. Couples who stayed married turn toward those bids about 86% of the time. Those who divorced, only 33%. Over time, missed bids for connection harden into loneliness. And I'm not in love starts to make emotional sense. Now, this turning away can be active or passive. For example, if one partner over-adapts to keep the peace, that just leaves space for resentment to build and desire fades. They may actually care deeply, but they feel dead inside and no longer in love. A fourth condition in which this statement is made is when there's routine without novelty. When everything becomes logistics, who's paying the bill, who's doing the pickup, relationships lose play and erotic charge. Desire withers in overfamiliarity and under-surprise. Esther Perel's work centers on this. She says that love thrives on closeness and knowing, but desire needs just enough distance and mystery to stay alive. Long-term relationships often lose play, surprise, and erotic energy, not because the partners don't care, but because life crowds out curiosity. The result can be, I care about you, but I don't feel in love. Another condition that prompts this statement is the romance mythology. In our culture, we've idealized permanent infatuation. When the highs wane, which they do, people panic. Well, if it doesn't feel like the beginning did, then something must be wrong. This fear fuels the statement. Our culture reinforces that perspective, often encouraging people to bail on a marriage or relationship that just isn't doing it for them anymore. And it kind of makes sense, but there's a problem. Remember our conversation about limerence? That early high-voltage infatuation that Dorothy Tenov wrote about? In episode 8 of this podcast, we interviewed Dr. Bellamy about this. Limerence feels intoxicating, and it fuels longing for the other. But people often mistake the end of limerence for the end of love, but it's not. That shift eventually happens in every relationship. It's a change that opens the way for a deeper kind of connection and new relationship skills. So those are some of the conditions in which the statement is often uttered. But what if you are the recipient of that statement? If you have a partner that says, I'm not in love with you anymore, how should you respond?
I love you, but I'm not in love with you. What do you think that means?
It's over.
Yeah, time to move on would be my thought.
Time to leave.
Yeah. But once they've said that, that's a bit of a red flag, yeah.
Yeah, leave. That if he's not willing to give you 100% of your time, or whoever you're in a relationship with, then it's not worth your time.
Let me offer 4 steps you can take if you ever hear that statement. Step 1, regulate. You don't have to accept their conclusion or collapse into panic. Breathe. Ground yourself. Do what Laura Munson modeled in her celebrated New York Times essay, Those Aren't Fighting Words, Dear. When she heard her husband say, I don't love you anymore, and I'm not sure I ever did, she calmly replied, I don't buy it. Then she asked him, what can we do to give you the distance you need without hurting the family? Here's what Laura wrote in her article. I simply had come to understand that I was not the root of my husband's problem. He was. If he could turn this problem into a marital fight, he could make it about us. I needed to get out of the way so that wouldn't happen. Privately, I decided to give him time. 6 months. I had good days and I had bad days. On the good days, I took the high road. I ignored his lashing out, his merciless jabs. But on bad days, I would fester in the August sun while the kids ran through the sprinklers, raging at him in my mind. But I never wavered. Although it may sound ridiculous to say don't take it personally when your husband tells you he no longer loves you, sometimes that's exactly what you have to do. Instead of issuing ultimatums, yelling, crying, or begging, I presented him with options. I created a summer of fun for our family and welcomed him to share in it or not. It was up to him. If he chose not to come along, we would miss him, but we would be just fine. That was Laura Munson's choice. It wasn't denial. It was self-possession. Instead of being consumed in chaos, she took control of her life and her family while her husband struggled toward his own resolution. Putting the responsibility back on your partner stops the emotional freefall so you can respond with clarity. That brings us to step number 2. Clarify, don't cross-examine. Use curious, steady questions to diagnose the missing components. Is it a lack of intimacy, passion, commitment? Try questions like these. When you say not in love, what's missing? Closeness, fun, attraction, hope? When did this shift begin? What changed around then? If you're not in love with me, are you feeling in love with someone else? Please be honest. What kind of effort from both of us would be worth trying for 8 to 12 weeks to see if something can change? Step 3. Set boundaries if there's an affair. Say, if we're exploring our marriage, the outside relationship must end with full transparency and no contact. Without that, this conversation can't be honest. In my opinion, this should be non-negotiable. Even staying friends with the affair partner is leaving the door ajar. In the meantime, don't spend energy trying to get your partner to feel in love with you again. Whether you try to use carrots, like making promises to change or initiating more sex, or you use sticks, like arguments and threats, any change that you evoke will likely be superficial and temporary. You can invite your partner to join you in making a change, but don't try to force them. Step 4, propose small, practical steps that both of you can take. There are plenty of good resources out there to help you do this work together. I've created a course that will help you do just that. The Building Us course was created for couples stuck in disconnection to help clarify their vision, align their expectations and boundaries, tune in to each other's needs, and install simple rituals that keep the momentum going. You can preview the course at affairhealing.com. I'll add the link to the episode notes. But whatever you choose to do, find steps you agree to try taking together. If those steps stall or fights derail quickly, bring in a pro, a counselor or trained coach experienced with infidelity or relationship disconnection can give structure, safety, and tools for relationship recovery and renewal. Now, is it realistic to expect that a relationship could survive a statement like, "I'm not in love with you anymore"? Should you try? When should you stop trying? Well, my answer to the question, is it possible, is yes. Yeah, many relationships do survive, even that severe of a statement, if both partners are willing to be honest with each other, end any outside relationships decisively, and practice new patterns long enough for feelings to catch up. Here are some possible actions that could help you. Remember the 5-to-1 ratio. According to research, successful relationships are characterized by a ratio of interactions that's at least 5-to-1 positive to negative interactions. That means for every negative encounter you have, you should have at least 5 positive ones on the other side. I'm not talking about fake cheering. I'm talking about frequent, regular, small repairs, especially after you get something wrong, and bids for connection with your partner. Another thing you might try to do is to build back your friendship. Relearn each other's inner worlds, your dreams, stresses, evolving identities. Friendship is the bedrock of romance. Or you might try scheduling togetherness. Disconnected marriages have usually allowed other routines or responsibilities to steal away the time for just the two of us. Maybe start small, maybe one new date night a month, and then build from there. Another action is to cultivate erotic interest. I'm not talking about just having more sex. I mean, reintroducing play, mystery, opportunity. Curiosity is an aphrodisiac. And if you're uncomfortable with the notion of doing this, find some resources or professional help. This is too important to neglect. But are there times, if a partner were to say to you, "I'm not in love with you," that you should stop trying to work on the relationship? Well, at least for now. Here are some of the conditions under which you should not try to keep working on the relationship. If the partner making the statement is firmly out and unwilling to try time-limit experiments or counseling, you can be out because you can't carry a 2-person load alone. If there's ongoing infidelity and a refusal to end it with transparency and no contact, you shouldn't keep trying. If there's a persistent pattern of contempt, eye-rolling mockery from a partner who refuses to change. According to relationship researcher Dr. John Gottman, contempt is the strongest predictor of divorce. And of course, if there's abuse, coercive control, or untreated addiction that endangers safety, you should not be putting effort into togetherness. Your well-being comes first, so get specialized help. And I want to say that this is the very kind of condition where maybe one partner is leaning into the relationship and the other seems to be leaning out, in which discernment counseling is the therapy of choice. Discernment counseling is a short-term approach that helps couples resolve that question, do we continue in our marriage or not? If you're curious about finding a discernment counselor, I'll include a link in the episode notes. I just want you to know that sometimes the brave, loving act is grieving and letting go. The goal of this episode is not to pressure anyone to stay. It's simply to replace panic with clarity so you can choose wisely.
I love you, but I'm not in love with you.
It sounds so final, and sometimes it is. But sometimes it's actually a diagnosis. It's telling us that we've lost our way. If you're the one who heard it, anchor yourself. Borrow Laura Munson's steadiness. I don't buy it. And then invite a we conversation. What's missing? What tiny experiments can we try? If you're the one who said it, go back and listen to episode 8, It Feels Like Love, and see if that provides a different perspective. I'll also provide some additional links in the episode notes for you to check out. Your story is not determined by a proclamation. Love that embraces honesty, follows a plan, and is nurtured with small daily choices has a surprising way of returning.